Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Sober Spartan podcast. As always, I have an awesome guest with me here. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Corey. Do you want to just give our audience a little bit of an introduction about who you are and like what you do?
Yeah, my name is Corey Bayer. I'm founder of Titan Outsourcing. And so we're a virtual assistant staffing company, and I also own a retail store that specializes in specialty retail sales. I am a Marine Corps veteran, did 5 years in the Marine Corps, combat tour. I've dealt and mentored a lot of people over the years who've had alcoholism issues. I myself, at one point, um, had a pretty rocky relationship as well, and ended up, using and playing around with way too much marijuana at one point. While that's not as, necessarily bad as alcoholism or, other drugs out there, it still, led to some, self-destructive behaviors. So, over the years, bettered myself and created an awesome team, developed an amazing relationship with my wife, and, you know, haven't looked back. Moving forward to, try to help as many people as we can as we grow and develop ourselves.
Cool. And yeah, that's something that I hear a lot of people talk about too, is like they say like their problem is marijuana and they're almost like sheepish to kind of say that because a lot of people like it doesn't affect them, but at the end of the day, it's like everything's going to affect us differently, right? Like for me, it was alcohol that was my problem, which led to different drugs and stuff like that. So, but when I smoked marijuana and stuff, it wasn't like an issue. But then I also know people who just that's all they do all day, and it's like ruining their lives. But maybe is that what like your issue was like in that sense? Like it was the marijuana that kind of was affecting you?
No, I use that as more of like a numbing agent because just a crappy relationship.
Hmm.
I worked at a psychiatric hospital for a while as a mental health tech. Um, and this psych facility really was an inpatient facility for a lot of people who ended up being addicts and things like that with really hard drugs. So I watched
Hmm.
people come in who were withdrawing from alcohol with, a pulse of, 200 plus and blood pressure through the roof. Like, I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, this person's going to stroke out. Or, you know, watching a person come in detoxing off of heroin and it's not going to kill you, but apparently it is the worst detox known. It is painful. Um, and it all, listening to the different counselors, talking to people and stuff like that, it all came back to there's the original addiction side, like some people just enjoy it, but a lot of people stay hooked with it because it's their almost escape from something that they don't want to address or they don't want to talk
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because that's kind of the same thing with me. Like, I would use alcohol, for example, or other drugs that if something bad happened in my life, then I would just fall back on that. And like, that would just be a habit for me. So when I see other people, it's like the same type of thing. It's like they don't know how to manage different things that are happening in their lives. So they fall back on what's easy to them, what they know, what they've maybe seen their parents or other people in their life kind of fall back to. But since you have a virtual assistant business, I kind of want to talk about that because like I like to talk about all things like personal development, time management, all that kind of thing. And I think virtual assistants can help a lot of people with managing their time a lot better than they're doing. So, um, I guess for your virtual assistants, like what kind of things are you seeing, like different tasks that you can like outsource to them?
Oh man, we have virtual assistants doing pretty much everything within a business. If it doesn't need to be physically touched anymore, a virtual assistant for the most part can do it. If obviously there's some licensing or stuff like that, regulations preventing that, they can do it. We have everything from very basic, email calendar management to spreadsheets, documents, We have architects and engineers that work with solar companies who are, you know, building out the actual installs going onto your house. AutoCAD designers working with cabinet makers or builders, stuff like that. I mean, it really varies. What you can use a virtual assistant is almost limited by only your imagination and your creativity. Um, we have like it's amazing to hear what people will use them for. I mean, we have security companies who have 24-hour phone monitoring, or they use them for video watching. Executive assistants who and personal assistants, they'll literally order all your groceries, schedule your dog appointments, your personal appointments, dental appointments, like anything that needs to go on in your life. As you build that trust with them, the virtual assistant is able to take that over and really just handle it all.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I just finished reading the book, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, and he like talks about all these like out of the box stuff. It's not like the standard things that like if you were to think about what a virtual assistant can do. Like he has assistants doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Like you were saying, like buying groceries. He even has assistants like going and filling up his vehicles with gas and stuff like that. Right? Because like
Mhm.
at the end of the day, it's like how much do you value your time? Right? It's like it's an easy lever to pull to go out and like get somebody to come in and take those like everyday tasks that like you don't necessarily enjoy, and then like they're not really moving the needle forward as much as like you can do if you were able to put your time somewhere else. So yeah, no, it's just very interesting to hear when people talk about how they use virtual assistants and stuff like that. But like for you, when someone's coming to you and they're like looking for a virtual assistant, like how does that process go? Like what kinds of things do you do to like kind of get someone a virtual assistant?
So I like to have a conversation with them. Dig into, what they're needing, what their pain points are in their business. Whether you are a successful team, because I just talked to one of those guys the other day. They had a whole team they're building out, and they need someone who comes in and, create SOPs. Dan Martell talks about, SOPs and stuff like that. And you'll hear in a lot of different entrepreneur groups, it's like you need to have all these SOPs and everything created before you hire, and no one has time for that. I mean, we should, yes, ideally in a perfect world, you should have those created before you hire out. However, what I'll do with you, or let's say, Andrew, you need a virtual assistant, like I'm going to
Mhm.
talk with you and be like, hey, what is, your first 5 jobs or tasks that you just take up a ton of time or you hate? Reason being is perfect example is email management. How many emails do you have? You go out, you put your email in, and now you're unknowingly subscribed to bullshit. It's coming in. You don't got time. You just like delete, delete, or hit to spam, and it never stops. And soon, you know, you have thousands of emails every month that you need to, unsubscribe to, or just that aren't even worth it. Cool. Use your virtual assistant to go in and unsubscribe from it. Organize your inbox into tabs where it just automatically sorts it sorts your inbox. So if someone's coming from John, it automatically goes to a John folder. And all these folders are now organized where you can go into the folders and check those out, or and vice versa. Most people, again, don't have the operation procedures built out for it. So what I like to do and teach our class too, hey, as you're walking through it with your virtual assistant, record it, make them pay attention, make them take notes, turn on, your AI support if it's in Zoom or if you have another software, and audio record it. That way they can take that audio, you can take the video, you can initially plug them into ChatGPT or something like that. It creates it. Then you have your virtual assistant walk step by step and recreate that process, no matter what it is in your business, from invoicing to billing to how you answer calls for your customer, how you want them to text someone, how you want them to dispatch cleaners or locksmiths to a job. Like, process that how you want it done. That way, one, it's done for any future hires, but then you also know, cool, this person actually knows how to do the job. And if they have questions and I'm not available, they forget, they can just refer back to that procedure on how to do it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like, I think a lot of people, they kind of push that off, like the SOPs. They're just like, oh, I don't have enough time. But it's like, when you say stuff like that, it's like, you don't have the time. So it's like, well, we all have 24 hours in a day, right? It's just how you use that time. So it's like, um, it's not about the time you have, it's just about the time you make for things like that, right? And so and this is funny because like, just thinking about it, when you're asking somebody like, hey, what do you think of the top 5 tasks that you're doing that you don't necessarily like? You have a lot of people saying like, oh, I actually don't know. And then do you have like some sort of recommendation that you can make to them to kind of figure out what those tasks might be?
So there's a time management study. I think Dan Martell, I believe, talks about it, but do a time management study. It's inconvenient, but you can do it for a couple days, a week, 2 weeks, and you're gonna have to track everything you do. Create an Excel sheet, piece of paper, what you're doing from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. if you just want to track for work. And it has to be everything. Cool. 5 minutes on emails, 10 minutes phone support. Um, Once you've tracked all that, you can really break down that by dollar values. What is low value task and what is high value task? Low value task be email management, calendar management, appointment setting. Um, those are things that, as a business owner, if you have the opportunity to say, make one deal and say, make $2,000 from it, well, your time would be better set in a meeting 8 times a day trying to close a $2,000 deal versus, spending 8 hours responding to emails. So looking at really what your highest value to time ratio is a good way to do it. Another list is, what do you just hate doing in your business? There's things out there, I hate making creatives. Like, can I do it? Can I go into Canva or Photoshop or something and make a cool design and make it all pleasant to the eyes that someone wants to look at? Yes. Do I want to do it? Absolutely not. That's something my wife likes better. So I
Mhm.
outsource that to my wife. Uh, or video edits. Do I like editing video? Like, do I have the vision for it? Yeah, but it's not my skill set. I don't want to do that. Like, there's always going to be something in your business that you have to do, um, but you don't want to. You're hesitant to. You don't like it. Social media management. That's another one. We all know we need to post a couple times a day in different groups on Facebook just to help build our brand, build who we are. But most of us don't want to, or we're resistant to it for whatever reason. I've been in an entrepreneur group for 3 years, and they preach post at least 2 times a day. Some stuff business related, some personal, just so people know you're alive and they're engaging, and the more likelihood they're gonna see something, that may be business related, and they're out to share it to someone. I don't do that consistently, and I know I should. So what can I do? Share it to my virtual assistants. Um, you know, I do something with the wife or family, cool. Send them a photo, be like, hey, figure out something for Monday on this. Find a quote, find something cool, you take care of it. Um, Zoom calls. This is a perfect thing. If I get a clip from this, I can have my virtual assistants, cut some segments from our call right here and now make social media posts for ourselves or our business. Um, that's another thing. Would I do it? Absolutely not. But if we talk for an hour, odds are there's going to be some segments in here that are really good. And, we can use those to have video and content created that can go on our social media. And now we have, weeks worth of content from one video. Um, but I'm not going to do it. I know I'm not. I can tell myself I'm going to do it. I know I should, and it'll create anxiety, but it's not going to happen. We all tell ourselves there's so many things we know we have to do in our business, but we neglect it. Um, and those are usually the lower value things, and the lower value things also add up to become valuable. So those are some of the tasks I would recommend you outsource.
Yeah, and I love that idea too. It's like not everything you're doing in your business or in your life you're gonna necessarily like enjoy doing. It's gonna actually take energy from you. Cause like even just thinking about it for myself, it's like if anything to do with like accounting and math and stuff like that, I can do it and I've done it and I've been doing it. But it's like at the end of the day, it's like, okay, could I find somebody who actually enjoys doing it and gets energy from doing that? Because there's people out there, right? So I think a lot of people like don't think about that. And it's like you're going to get just even energy in yourself, like off-sourcing some of these tasks. It's just going to like move the needle that much more, and you're going to have like that much more of an enjoyable day because now it's not like, oh, I have to do accounting, and then you're like dreading it. It's like you wake up
Mm,
the next day and you're like, okay, stress gone, that's being taken care of, and by somebody who loves doing it and is better than me at doing it, right?
yeah.
But another thing that kind of comes up for me when I'm thinking about virtual assistants, and I think a lot of people can probably think along these lines is like because in my life like something that I've seen time and time again is like when you're thinking about something that is like cheaper, it's usually not as good, right? And I think a lot of people have it in their mind because a virtual assistant, people think like, oh, it's overseas, it's offshore, it's going to be a little bit cheaper than if I was to hire somebody to do as an assistant in my own country. But what I've seen is like because yeah, of course, with some things you're gonna want to spend a little bit of money on it. Like I wouldn't go to a cheap sushi place, for example. Um, but I think for when you're like looking at hiring people and stuff like that, it doesn't really matter where they're from. What matters more is like the training that they get and and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Can you maybe talk about a little bit of the training you do, or maybe how you source these people so then they're like a higher quality person for when you're putting them in with somebody who might need them.
Absolutely. So, I want to touch on one thing. You talk about price, cheaper isn't always better and stuff like that. Or when you outsource something. Look around your room real quick. And things may be a little bit different in Canada versus US, but take a quick look. How many things can you see within arm reach that you know definitively are made in Canada or made in the United States? Most everything is from
Zero.
China, Thailand, Vietnam. I'm the shirt, everything I'm wearing right now, probably even this ring I'm wearing, everything is probably made overseas. Call customer support nowadays. Whether, almost all of your Fortune 500 companies, they're going to use overseas team. Whether you're talking to them overseas through chat support, phone support, um, they're calling overseas. Fortune 500 have been doing it for years to offset labor markets and labor trends. Your average hire, let's go within the US, if you want minimum wage, you know, you're lucky if they're a high school graduate. Um, and minimum wage here is 7.25 in the US. You're not going to get a person for $7.25 that's worth anything. You may be able to get a high school kid who needs, a couple hours because they want their first job. In my retail store, I'm lucky if I can get someone who wants to work for $14 an hour that just isn't horrible. They actually want to work. When we outsource and you think about, it's cheaper, it's better, most people don't realize, even in the United States, our absolute poor and poverty people are considered 1% status. The vast majority of the world makes less than $2 a day. The Philippines is where we outsource from. You're lucky if I think some places pay a little bit more, but I think the national wage is, maybe $12 a day. That's what their minimum wage is. But then you go to small provincial towns and stuff like that, and their minimum wage technically doesn't apply. There's still people getting paid. My wife, when she lived in the Philippines, got paid $5 a day, and she worked for the government, who has to enforce minimum wage. Um, and she has her bachelor's degree in English, and she was a customer service rep for one of the city government offices. We hire someone in that same type of job for her here in the US, you're looking at a minimum $30,000 job nowadays. You know, we can't you cannot compete with quality of education versus going international. Um, we have people who have bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, MBAs, aeronautical engineers, electrical engineers, chemical engineers. We have these people choosing to work as a virtual assistant to manage your emails or be your personal assistant because even if I offer them, you know, $5, $6 an hour, they are tripling whatever salary they could get. We hired some OJTs who were finishing up college in the Philippines. We brought them on because they had to do, I think, a 4-month stint with a business for working hours. And I talked to them and they were hopeful. They're all finishing, graduating college as computer programmers and information science. And I told them, I was like, hey, practice your work, develop your skills, but find something that pays you. Because I tell you now, there are hundreds, thousands of people we've interviewed that have high-end degrees, but the labor market doesn't exist in the Philippines, and they either work in a call center for American companies or they're in a mall selling kiosks, selling cell phones. I would be I would do it to support my family, but I'd be humiliated if I spent 4 years, 5 years going to college to be, a mechanical engineer, an electrical engineer, and the only job I can find and get is selling a cell phone in a mall. The quality of education it's I'm not saying it's better than the US, but you have people who've proven themselves to get that. So you're not getting dumb people, you're getting very smart. And then because you're giving them a financial opportunity, they tend to be beyond appreciative and want to show up to work. Nowadays, I've seen it in my store. You go for customer service anywhere you go, people are like busy on their phone. They won't greet you even, walking in. Um, Virtual assistants from other companies are typically very grateful for the opportunity for their salary. I've never been thanked by an employee here paying them a job and they get a car. But in the Philippines, they have the opportunity. You've helped them buy a car, helped them, even pay for medicine for their family member, and they're grateful to you because you give them the chance. So it's a completely different mindset. And if my employees that are my virtual assistants were here in the US, I'd have to pay them, and I would be happy to pay them $30 an hour because they are amazing. But because they're in the Philippines, I'm able to pay them, $5, $6 an hour, and I get more work out of them than I've probably gotten out of any real and physical employee I've hired in my life.
Yeah, no, that's good because, like, especially with the American dollar, like, if you were to pay me $10 an hour, for example, that would actually mean like $14 an hour for me here with the
Mm-hmm.
conversion, right? So it's like you don't really think about that. Like, if you're paying somebody what you might think is like lower for like a higher skilled employee,
Mm-hmm.
it actually means a lot for them, and, and they can use that money and it stretches a lot further over there because of the conversion rate, right? So
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. And like, if you look at anyone, like any sort of like person, no matter where they're from, like I was saying before, it's like it matters how they were trained, and like their mindset with it. Like, so if they're excited to go to work, they're grateful to have the job, stuff like that, you're going to get a lot more out of that person than somebody who's just like struggling to go to work, dreading to go to work, like, oh, I just want to be living off government assistance or something, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, no, that's good. And then the next question I had for you is, and I think this is something that a lot of people are concerned about, especially when you're dealing with things online, is like the trust and security. So do you have anything that like maybe you go over with people you're getting assistance for, like different things that like might help them keep the information that's shared with the virtual assistant like confidential and secure?
Yeah, there's a couple things out there that do exist for security. One, when hiring and going with an agency, there is a benefit over going through like online jobs or Fiverr or something like that. Our team, we actually run a NBI clearance. I think it stands for like National Investigation Bureau. It's basically like an FBI grade background check on. Make sure they are who they are and stuff like that. You can require them to submit that in local police clearances, make sure they don't have a criminal record. Um, but some of the steps we do recommend is, hey, let's go ahead and you should have your virtual assistant, whether you buy it or you require them to get it, have an active subscription to Advast or Norton or something like that, and run virus protection software before they ever access your computer system, before your backend, anything like that. Make sure, there's nothing hiding on their computer. That's a great one. Um, Another thing, some people have a little more sensitive information and they definitely don't want it going. Another options is to consider remote desktop. So you may have to upgrade to like the business or professional version of like Microsoft, or I think some Apple computers allow for it. But remote desktop essentially allows you to set up a secondary computer in your office and you have your virtual assistant log in from, say, the Philippines. So you can firewall them coming in. So no, potentially no malware, anything dangerous comes onto your computer. Then they access all your stuff, your logins from your computer, and then they log out when you're done. That prevents you from having to give them too many passwords or anything like that, because you can always just fully control everything right then and there. Um, that's something that, say, like our bookkeepers who work with our accountants will do. They log into their accounting office, and their accountant enters all passwords and relevant information and stuff like that. Trust and time is one too. Same thing with a physical employee. I'm probably not just going to give them keys to the castle day one. Ease into it, get to know them. Yes, some of the tasks do require you to, give them keys to the castle, but, you know, log into your email. Okay, cool. Like, it's not going to cause that big of issue. If they try to change a password, I can reset it. But I've never really had a virtual assistant who's tried to been malicious. I've had real employees steal from me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing though, is, you know, people are terrified that someone who's a virtual assistant is gonna, screw them over. While that is a possibility, the same person you hire to the same role is hired with a real person, they have that same possibility. Um, shitty people are gonna do shitty things, and unfortunately, we can try all these different ways to stop it, and there's no guarantee. I was working in my retail store, and I popped in and went to the restroom, and happened to look under the sink for whatever reason, and saw 200 or like $100 worth of product under the sink, and I was like, why the fuck is this here? So I happened to watch the security camera, and I just watched the girl. She took them and then hid them in the bathroom. And I was like, had she just put them in her purse, and I would have never, like, what are the odds? But, people are going to steal if they're going to steal. There's stories as an entrepreneur, we've hear accountants and CPAs stealing from their clients or cooking their books. So, they're losing money on various things. Office managers or blah blah blah. Like, construction employees stealing equipment or tools. It's gonna happen. Um, you have a chance that, it can happen. Have I had it happen to me? No. Have I had it happen to one of my customers? No. But whether you hire someone in person or virtually, there's always the odds that something bad could happen. One other tool I like to use is Hubstaff. It's a screenshot monitoring system. So it takes screenshots of their computers 3 times every 10 minutes. So you know what they're looking at. Ultimately, though, if it's their personal computer, once they're off the clock, like, they could still go into your systems and stuff like that. The only real way, I guess, if you truly want the best security measures for them, would be buy a laptop, put all the data encryption software, everything you need on it, and then ship it to your virtual assistant. A few steps here and there and just building that trust with them, and odds are they're not going to take advantage of you and steal from you. But I guess there's always that possibility.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's like you said, it's just with any that's just people in general. You're gonna have some good people and you're gonna have bad people, right? It's just I think like especially with what you're doing with your agency and you are the actual person that goes out and like seeks these people out, you do background checks, that kind of thing. I think all that kind of stuff is good to minimize on the type of person you're gonna get that's gonna actually even think about, you know, doing something that might harm the business or that's not genuine or anything like that, right?
Mhm.
And I guess just thinking about like because we're getting more and more online every day, right? Would you say there's any difference to like building trust with your virtual assistant opposed to maybe somebody that's like you're in the office with?
A little bit, in the sense of, you don't have the team bonding meetings. Um, we have a client, their real estate office, and every Friday they have like a team meeting. Everyone comes in, they have lunch. Okay, cool. Well, you can't really have lunch with your virtual assistant. So what I told them to kind of offset that is, you know what? Give them a $10 or $20 bonus and be like, hey, order you dinner, order you lunch, take your family out, something like that. Like, you can't eat with us, but this is our way of showing some sort of appreciation. Um, but you can grow just as close with a virtual assistant as you can, a traditional employee. If you're treating them like a human and not software, and you're having daily
Mhm.
communication with them, definitely recommend having video calls with them probably twice a week. Like, you're going to see this person, you're going to get to know them, you're going to hear their issues, their problems, their successes, their wins, their falls. Like, unless you are just kind of a cold, heartless person, there's just really no reason why you wouldn't develop some sort of like work relationship and friendship with this person.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think just because a lot of people like, and I know I used to think kind of this way was it's it's a lot different like when you're online, but I think like now that videos being more dominant and stuff like that, you can actually have face to face conversations with people. It's like giving that more of a human element opposed to like just being text based all the time and
Mhm.
stuff. Um, but another question I had for you was like, is there a reason that you specifically chose like the Philippines to source these VAs over somewhere else?
So my wife is Filipino.
Okay.
Um, I met her actually online and then flew over to the Philippines a couple months after meeting her and married her in the Philippines. Um, and then brought her to the US in 2020 during the height of COVID. I fell in love with the Philippines after Afghanistan. While I was in Afghanistan, we call them TCNs, like third country nationals or something like that, and they would come in and they were just kind of like the base support. You need a random forklift maintenance or tire fixed that wasn't considered military equipment. Those people would go out. They clean the porta shitters. And, me being me, I just talked to them and found out where they're from and just kind of had conversations. And they're like, yeah, we're going on home after y'all's tour. We go home for a month. And I was like, cool. Here's my contact information. Show me around. And after I got home from Afghanistan, we met up. I flew to the Philippines and uh, fell in love with the country. And then I'd kept going back multiple times ever since. Beautiful country. I personally love it. Um, so that's probably why I chose to recruit from the Philippines. My wife is from there. She knows all the processes. Her friends are there. So we have a way to recruit that is a lot easier than other companies that exist out there. Um, I have a personal tie to it, and her roots are there. So it makes it a lot easier to, operate and build businesses there as well versus if I was just strictly going in as an American. Like, I wouldn't have the connection I have with the country if I was, for example, one of the other recruitment companies out there.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. The reason why I asked that because I know a bunch of Filipino guys that have come here to Canada to do work for a company that does cell phone towers. And so
Mm.
they pay people pretty well, and they have a program that actually brings people over to make money here. My brother and my friend used to work for this company, and like so, I used to always hang out with these guys. We'd have barbecue stuff like that, and it just seemed like they were just the super happy go lucky people, always like into helping people, super hardworking, that kind of thing. So I can definitely see why like sourcing them from there for like culture even would be a thing. So when someone's coming to you and they're looking to hire one of these VAs, like is there any set standards for like the amount of hours worked, or like do you have like a bar that you set like, hey, let's not quite enough hours, we can't get you somebody for that, or like anything like that, like around work hours, like what can you say about that?
I try to have a minimum of 20 hours. While we do accept like short-term gig work, we have someone needs this or that done and it's only going to be, 15 or 20 hours. It's kind of a one-time spot. We will do that occasionally, but I try to do 20 hours minimum. Reason being is with how much we pay our virtual assistants, even 20 hours part-time is what some people are working for and making full-time in the Philippines. So it keeps them kind of focused on one client. Um, we try very hard with very few exceptions to um, allow only one virtual assistant per client or one client per virtual assistant. Um, Reason being is if you have too many people or someone in very similar roles between two different clients, things kind of melt together. And, you may accidentally be talking about one business versus the other, and mess up something for your client. A video editor or something like that, not as worried because it's kind of they go into a folder and they work with it, save it to the folder. But your customer service person, we want them to have 20 hours, gives them a good chance to learn your role, learn your business, and focus on you and still make enough hours to potentially provide for them their family.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like on the other end of the spectrum, like say you built a relationship with the VA, that kind of thing, and then like the VA was like, "Oh, I want to make a little bit more money. I want to work longer during the day." Like, is that something that some of your VAs do when they're working with somebody?
Yeah, so extending the hours is always condition of the client. So Andrew, let's say you have a virtual assistant, we've hired them off, they're working 20 hours. If and we're facilitating our normal method, they're talking to us, hey, I need to get some more hours. Well, we're going to communicate with you too. Hey, Andrew, what are some things your VA needs some extra hours? Like, Do you have the budget to increase their hours? Do you have the tasks? Like, what can we do to help coach you so you can more effectively use them? Because while you may be able to afford it, if you can't effectively fill their schedule for what you feel like is a productive 40 hours, it's not going to be a strong fit. You're just eventually going to kind of be maybe a little resentful, like, I'm paying you for 40 hours, but am I really getting 40 hours out of you? Um, so yes, you can increase the time, and I encourage all of our clients to increase the time. Uh, but we want to make sure that it's a good time for you as the client. You can afford it, and your virtual assistant's doing your job. You're happy with their work. They're not causing any issues, anything like that, before progressing them from part-time to full-time.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what I was more asking is like, say you have somebody already full time and you want them to work like extra hours beyond the 40 hours a week. Because I know for me, what
Oh, so
like
overtime.
when I work like 10 to 12 hours every single day, 7 days a week, right? So is that something that they do? That like, do they work overtime past the 40 hours a week?
Yes, so that is possible. Um, we would ideally, if coming into the situation, I would discuss rates and hours and stuff like that with you beforehand. Um, if it is something that, starts going on, you know, hit your busy season and you need to increase them up or it's coming, first, communicate with your virtual assistant. Make sure that it is okay with them because some people have very fixed schedules and having a 2 hour increase could throw a big wrench in everything they have going on. Um, so I would make sure your virtual assistant is okay with it. If hiring from the very get-go, hey, I need someone who can work 60 hours a week, we can do that. We can find it. I have a virtual assistant right now who works 60 hours a week. But we have to communicate on it. Just like, you want your employer to communicate with you. Like, as long as we're talking about it and we make that expectations clear from the get go, then we can accommodate and make it work. What people don't like, and I don't think it differentiates from the US to Canada to the Philippines, is employers last minute being like, hey, you got to work tomorrow, or hey, you got to work extra 3 hours today. Like, people don't like that, especially when they're already working graveyard and they're probably actually tired by the end of their shift. So, open communication is all I have to say on that. It is possible to definitely get someone who works more than 40 to 60 hours. But that being said, at the same time, I may consider if you're looking at significantly long term 60 hours, I'd want to communicate with the virtual assistant and maybe see about just giving you a second VA, um, so that you have that flexibility.
Okay, so there's no like laws or rules or anything like that getting in the way. It's like just have the common decency to have a conversation with you, the agency, and the virtual assistant you're working with.
Correct. So depending on the agency you work with, so our company has an office in the Philippines, so we have to abide by the Department of Labor. There are some variabilities that will have to happen, such as time and a half or vacation pay or holiday pay. Like, those things have to be in consideration. There's no question about it. However, let's say you, Andrew, decided to go onto Fiverr or online jobs or just a random Facebook group and find your own virtual assistant. You are not legally bound by any of the laws in the Philippines for fair labor employment. And because they're not a citizen of Canada, nor would they potentially ever even have the income to qualify for it, odds are they can't hold you legally liable for anything with your Department of Labor.
Is that
So,
something that you're seeing people take advantage of them for, like making them work more hours and then not paying them like overtime or even paying them vacation pay, stuff like that?
um, It varies. I've never seen most people don't necessarily pay like time and a half. They'll usually just get straight pay for, the hours worked. Most consider this kind of more reasonable because they're getting paid more money than they would normally back home anyways. Um, I will pay my team sometimes time and a half. In the Philippines, it's law if you work holidays, you get paid time and a half. Um, Depending on the holiday, we will pay it. Sometimes we won't. We'll just be like, hey, you have a choice. Like, you can have today off, no pay, or you can work. And we give them that option. But, if major holidays or something like that, or, you know, Christmas is coming up, yeah, we'll do time and a half just to give them a little bit of extra money or something like that.
Okay. And you said that you have your VAs come into an office over there. So I guess the question I had was like, do you have them work on like a set schedule? Like the office opens here, and then so there's a window that they can work with people, or do you have them like set their own schedule in case they need to work on a different time zone or anything?
No. So uh our VA schedule is based on the client's needs.
Okay.
So you're in Pacific Standard Time. If you wanted your virtual assistant to work from 8 to 4 or work 8 hours that day, you're going to pick and choose what 8 hours you want them to work. If you want them from 8 to 4 or 10 to 6, like if that's your hours, cool. That's when the virtual assistant will work too. They'll go to our little work co-op and log in and connect with you, and that's where they work. However, same thing. If someone's on the East Coast, they're 3 hours behind you. So same shift, but now they're showing up to work and getting off 3 hours earlier. Um, we do not have fixed schedules, kind of like if it was a normal office job, because our schedules are dictated by the client the virtual assistant's with.
So you have people come in to and from the office at pretty much all hours, just based on like what your clients might need the virtual assistant to work.
Yeah, essentially.
That makes sense.
So we've recently did the office. So this is kind of a newer thing that we've been building. We had just been doing work from home. So it is good in the sense it gives more people flexibility, but we have learned that, some people will take advantage of it. And there's less controllables. We can ensure, our site has backup generator. Our site has, backup internet and Starlink internet. Like these are things that we can control to ensure serviceability for our clients. But when you work from home, that I can't control those things. I can't make you buy a generator or anything like that for your personal house. Um, so we started doing the little office thing, and we're slowly getting more and more people to work there. Um, and it's kind of slowly adapting and growing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I even had somebody they were talking about. They had a virtual assistant that was working for them for a long time, and they really liked the work. So for a bonus, what they did was they bought them a generator for their house. Because I guess is there problems with like the power grid over there and like power outages and stuff?
Yes. So, and I'm going to make a generalized statement because I don't know if this is how it is in every country around the world, but you are dealing with a developing country. I don't know if third world is technically still the official term, but you're dealing with a country that is developing. Their power grids are not necessarily, they're not as good as ours. Their infrastructure is not as good. Nothing is to the same standards as what we have here in the States or in Canada. So there are power outages. If you ever go to the Philippines or look up images, you'll see lines like this. There's 100 different power lines going left and right and internet lines. And there's no true guarantee that, they do have pretty good reliability and stuff like that, but it can go down. Um, it's one of the things, you offset let's see, Canada is about to be $17 an hour. $17.20 an hour this coming October. So you offset paying $17 to paying someone $7 an hour. You know, like you have to have some understanding. Like it's a developing country. There are going to be some outages. So buying your virtual assistant now, this being said, I would make sure and wait 6 months to a year. Make sure you have, you've built that trust. You feel like they're going to be there long term. Um, Give them some financial raises so they don't disappear to go somewhere else. But yeah, absolutely. Buy them a generator. Um, they have internet outages because it happens. I was on a Zoom call talking to a customer just like we are right now, or a lead at that point, and my internet, or it was either internet outage or a power outage. It just gone. So luckily my wife, called from phone, finished it up. Go outside, there's a damn rat eating the wire. So like it
Been
happened.
there.
Yeah. So with us having the office, we're able to invest in a generator. We have two different lines of fiber internet from different providers going to it, and then I've ordered a Starlink satellite system. So we should always have some sort of connection. And then I tell our customers too, it's like, hey, look, there may also be times the Philippines is in the ocean, they have a typhoon, equivalent of a hurricane. Like, have understanding. You're not going to expect someone in Houston, Texas, or Florida to like be at work when 100-mile-an-hour winds are destroying everything. Like, no, man, go shelter. Like, yeah, it sucks. You're gone, and I get it. Like, your mindset is like, but I need to focus on my business. I hired you for my business, but you also have to have that compassion and understanding. Like, no one gives a fuck about your business when my roof just got ripped off my house. Like, your business doesn't mean anything when, you know, I'm sitting on my roof because there's floodwaters that are, 12 feet high. So, like, just have some understanding. Like, you're saving a lot of money. There's going to be some issues arise from the difference of just culture and, it's not as developed as where we live now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's like sometimes you got to remember because like I live in a place where like we get some weather, but we don't get like a typhoon or we don't get tornadoes or anything like that. Like we get some severe weather, but it's not like anything crazy like that. So I think a lot of people just got to remember like, hey, you don't expect these people to work in these like the severe weather and stuff. And like you said, just have empathy and like remember that these are people too. They're not just like you said before, they're not just some software or something like that or a
Yeah.
robot. So no, that's good. And so for onboarding for the VAs, do you have a specific process that you take people through to get these virtual assistants onboarded?
So my team does. What we would do normally is after our sales call, we have an onboarding call with our recruiters and HR. They're gonna go through and just kind of double check what we talked about on our call. They're gonna see if you have gender preferences, which it's a protected hiring subclass thing in the U.S., but and probably Canada. But some people do better having a woman voice or male voice, or some just get along better. But skill sets: do you need this software, this software? What softwares? What skills? What experience? They're really going to kind of dive in and figure out who and what you're looking for, and then they're going to recruit and then present you with some options to see the applicants and then make a determination to hire. Typically, our process takes anywhere between 7 to 14 days from the time we start, sometimes a little bit longer. But overall, I mean, it's a pretty solid process. Then once you've hired your VA, we check on the VA a couple times periodically every week, and then we check on with the client, and I personally check with the VA at 14:30 45, 60, 90, and 120 day markers to make sure they're meeting KPIs and progress and expectations.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess we're getting close to time here, so I'll keep this last. This will probably be the last question. But do you have any real life examples of people that you've worked with where when they hired a VA, it completely changed their business and their life?
Absolutely. So, I have a guy named Brian Stotch. He's a locksmith in Chicago. He kind of went from being like a partnership franchise to split apart. And he was always in the office and always on the road doing jobs. He got a virtual assistant, and the virtual assistant now takes care of almost everything office size. She dispatches jobs, handles bills, pretty much everything office work, so he can focus on building and growing his business. And he's had his VA, shit, man, like maybe 2.5, maybe 3 years now. Same one. And she's helped him now launch, and they've opened a second office or a second location in a whole different state. Um, that's just one example. We have another guy. He has a fraternity business where he organizes events with fraternities. And one of the things he didn't, one of the things he just didn't necessarily like was staying on top of his books. We hire him a guy. He has his bachelor's in accounting and his MBA. And this guy takes care of and handles all of his books, all of his accounting stuff. So much so that at the end of the year, when it's tax time, his VA and his CPA just communicate the whole time, and then the client just signs whatever paperwork he has to sign. Like, he doesn't do any of it. Um, Another one of our clients is a security company. They originally were paying about $28 to $35 an hour for their office staff. He brought on 5 virtual assistants. I think they have like 7 now, and they were able to pretty much reduce almost all of their traditional office staff, and his entire business's back end is ran by virtual assistants, from onboarding and client, communications to reports. Like, if it can be done on a computer, it can be done by a virtual assistant, and you could potentially outsource and save a ton of money in doing so. For every one employee, traditional employee here, you could probably get 2 to 3 traditional employees in the Philippines.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I always like to hear about like people like changing their lives with doing something like this because like I think a lot of people think of like hiring somebody in their business as more of an expense than an investment because like at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, if you have somebody coming in, for example, doing the books and stuff like that, and it's giving you more energy, and you have somebody that's actually enjoying it and can do it better than you, then why not? And then at tax time, it's not a moment where you're stressing and be like, oh, did I do everything right? Because you know you have somebody that's like focusing on that for you, right?
Yeah.
But I guess in closing here, do you want to share maybe your social media or where people can find you if they're interested in kind of following you and learning more about virtual assistants?
Yeah, no. So my name's Corey Bear. I'm the only Corey Bear on Facebook with verified check. So you can always follow me, send me a friend request. But you can also find us at titanoutsourcing.com, or look up Titan Outsourcing on Facebook, Instagram. We have some TikToks. We're continuously growing, and we want to work with everyone. So reach out if you have any questions or concerns. And we're here for you.
Cool. I appreciate you coming on. Like this has been something that I've been thinking a lot about myself. So it's definitely been insightful for me. But I'll definitely make sure to put all your contact information in the show notes. So guys, if you want to follow Corey, make sure to go seek him out because he's just an absolute stud. He knows his stuff. So that's the episode, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Thank you.